Good morning, everyone. We might get underway. Thank you. So good morning. My name's Todd Hopwood. I'm Council's Manager of Customer and Business Integrity Division. So procurement functions are part of my division. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all today to our 5th annual Doing Business with Council seminar. We've run this obviously for 5 years now. They're proving very successful. I think we've got 300 registrations, including online today, which shows the popularity and the interest in doing business with Council. Before I commence, I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to pay my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of Dharawal country, the land on which we meet here today. I would also like to pay my respect to elders past, present and those emerging, and also extend my respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander persons with us today. First up today, we're going to have our General Manager, Greg Doyle, give a bit of an introduction and a welcome. He's a keen supporter of our procurement function and also our local businesses. So Greg's just going to give us a quick introduction and welcome. Thanks, Greg.
Ngumbi Yalunga, hello and welcome. I'd like to acknowledge today we have the absolute privilege to meet on Dharawal Nurul, so Dharawal country, near between Merigong and Garragarang, so between the escarpment and the ocean. So thanks for joining us. Wonderful morning. Lots of buri jumping this morning, lots of whales jumping this morning. If there's ever been a great opportunity for small business, I don't know, whale watching at the present time. It seems like all the whales stay in Wollongong here in Wollongong. They all come here. I just want to welcome those of you playing at home as well. There's about 220 or 30 people online as well. And for those of you that already know, good to see some familiar faces in the room. And for those of you that we haven't had the pleasure of doing business with yet, hopefully this information that you get today will be a closer step to us developing and establishing a relationship that is great for all of us. The city is very much focused on doing business with business and doing business better with business. I spoke last week at an event that the Small Business Commissioner put on, and some of you were there. And then the week before, had the absolute pleasure in sponsoring and hosting the Aboriginal Business Expo as well, which was a huge success for us and has also translated into lots of opportunities for new business, not only with between business, but with us as well. We learnt a significant amount from just listening, yarning and hearing more about business. One of the things that I spoke about, I think last year or the year before, was sometimes an organisation the size of ours, which is fairly significant in the region, needs to understand what it is you can deliver before we actually go to market for things. Today you'll hear around some of our infrastructure projects, quite an ambitious program. We have a new council, which is really exciting. So 13 councillors, 8 of which are new, and a new Lord Mayor who has an incredible passion and enthusiasm and commitment to local business as well. As a business owner outside of council, myself, I understand a whole range of the challenges that some of you have faced over the last 3 or 4 years. And again, I just want to acknowledge and congratulate you for continuing to be in business in trading conditions that are virtually, I hate the word unprecedented, but unprecedented. But in terms of a whole range of things, often when, as business people, the challenges for us come in waves, it feels like it was continuous and continues to be the case. So we're mindful, and part of the role, there's a range of us at council that work here that also have interests outside of the organisation. And it's very important for us to use those experiences to be able to understand and acknowledge what you face as business community, or if you're a sole trader or somebody that's actually thinking of investing in your business to develop your business. We're keen. Obviously, the primary reason we want to talk to you today and hear from you today is because we've got things that we need to have done to complement our workforce. We're about 1,800 people here. It feels like it doesn't matter where you go in the city or just outside of the city, you meet somebody that has some connection to our council, and I think that's a positive thing. For us though, there's a range of works that we need to do to meet the needs and desires of the community. And that requires us to complement our existing workforce, but then also be a good procurer and a good partner of services. One of the things I just wanted to mention today is if you've had an existing relationship with us and there's been experiences that you think we could improve on, if you wouldn't mind touching base with somebody today, one of the officers today, in terms of providing that feedback, it's really important. Again, we can't be better at what we do if you don't give us a heads up of where we can improve. And likewise, we're very much focused on ensuring that you also don't have any surprises and that you also get feedback in terms of what our supply experience is as well. I won't talk too much longer, but just to say thank you for making the time. I understand it costs you money to be here today. It costs your businesses money as well, and the people that you represent. We want to do business with people that are, I'm a bit old-fashioned, good values, decent people, and people that look after their people. If you're a business that doesn't tick all those three boxes, it's been an absolute pleasure in meeting you. We're the same. We're in the same boat. Our organisation is very much committed to being very humanistic, very values focused, very, it is old fashioned. Manners, doing the right thing, paying people on time or earlier if we can, but understanding that it's a relationship and a long-term one. We want you to employ more local people. We want you to invest more in your businesses. And the only way we can do that is if we have a relationship that is one that's open, transparent, and you know from the very beginning what the expectations are. Just before I fly off, any questions for me? Oh, this is the fourth meeting I've been to this morning, and this is the first meeting I've been to where no one's had any questions. So fantastic. If you're playing at home, someone will be able to answer them for you. I'll fly out of here, but please enjoy your day. Try and squeeze as much information out of some of the characters that you'll meet from council today. And again, thank you for your investment of time and energy, and let's see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Today we've got quite a number of speakers for you today, but before I start, as Greg said and I've said, there's an online broadcast of this presentation. So we just make sure that you're aware that it's being recorded and broadcast via the internet, and the recording will go up on our website for playback later if you want. So if you appear, if your voice appears on microphone, it'll be there for perpetuity. So in addition to that, obviously we can't accept any responsibility for defamatory or discriminatory or offensive messages, but we'll basically curate the Q&A, so it should be just our staff on the microphone. So the agenda today, we've got, as I said, we've got quite a number of speakers. You've heard from Greg, importantly our General Manager. We'll look at our infrastructure investment program that totals approximately $670 million of expenditure in the next 4 years, so that's quite a lot of opportunities there. We'll go through our procurement framework itself, how it works if you're new to dealing with local government or government in general, how the procurement process works and some of the rules. We'll have a speaker on improving your tender submissions. So one of our staff that's involved in scoring and assessing tender responses regularly. So that'll be a very good session in terms of knowing what works and what doesn't work in your submissions. And joining us today, we have some reps from local government procurement. So they're an amalgamated procurement body for the local government sector. And so there's opportunities for suppliers to get on panels for local government procurement, and we draw from those supplier panels as well. But also you can service other councils around the state if you have that capacity or geographic spread that may allow that. So John from local government procurement will go through that process as well. And at the end, we'll have a good amount of time for Q&A for those online. Put your questions in the chat and the staff will amalgamate those and they'll read them into the microphone for you at the end. So we'll get questions both from in the room and from those attending at home. But our first speaker today is Chris O'Connor, who's Council's Infrastructure Governance Manager, and he is going to take us through our infrastructure program for the next 4 years. And I'll just skip over Greg's little slide. Cool. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Todd. So this is Chris O'Connor, Infrastructure Governance Manager at Wollongong City Council. And Greg's introduction was a really good segue to what I wanted to talk about, in that we do have a very ambitious infrastructure investment program And we need to, because as you can see on screen, we have a fairly significant asset portfolio. And a lot of what we do is we have to invest in that portfolio just so we can keep this infrastructure continuing to deliver a level of service to the community. But that's not everything we do. As we know, housing is a hot topic issue for all tiers of government at the moment. West Dapto will be huge for council. It's building a city the size of either a Port Macquarie or a Wagga in the southwest of the LGA, and to provide housing for those 50,000 people who are going to live out there over the next 50 years. That's at least $1 billion worth of infrastructure that we need to build to support that growing community. So just over the next couple of slides, I wanted to pull out just some of the highlights of our planned infrastructure investment, and in particular, some of the larger projects that we will be putting to tender over the next 4 years. I was just talking about West Dapto growth. So this project will shortly be introduced into Council's infrastructure investment program. So Cleveland Road upgrade, that's a 2-kilometre upgrade of road out in West Dapto, and that's going to support about 2,500 new residents out there. Sorry, 2,500 new dwellings out in West Dapto over the next few years. Another focus of council is our shared path infrastructure. There's huge interest in this from councillors and the community. We have some big shared path projects being built at Grand Pacific Walk. So we're looking to construct 2 new sections around Coalcliff and around Austinmere. That's a very well-loved piece of, I guess, tourist infrastructure, visitors to the city, but also just the locals who use it every day. And also with some support from the state government, we'll be looking to build a fairly substantial connection to Grand Pacific Walk from Corrimal train station, a new shared path link from that station all the way along Murray Road to to Grand Pacific Walk. So just back to West Dapto, we've made some really great investments in road infrastructure in that release over the last 10, 15 years. And now we're starting to move to, I guess, some of that software infrastructure. So we now have programmed the design and construction of the Duck Sporting and Community Hub. And that's going to be the first district level sporting and rec precinct servicing that release area. So we're really excited to have that in the program and have that ready for the community to use in the next few years. Back to the city centre, another well-loved precinct, North Wollongong Seawall. We finished stage 1 just out the front of the surf club. We're going to go back in 2026 and we're going to finish that seawall. So that's going to extend from where you can see on screen, and it'll extend further south, tie into the Bathers Pavilion building. And that's going to provide, that's also going to include an all abilities access ramp to connect the promenade down to the beach, which is really cool. So our buildings, we're in one of our buildings, but we have 700 buildings and shelters across the LGA, that's a big portfolio, and they deliver a range of services. It's sporting amenities, it's libraries, it's community infrastructure. Just some of the bigger projects we're planning to build over the next few years. We've got a new community centre and library in Helensburgh, a new community centre at Darks. So where we're planning to build the sporting and rec precinct, we'll have a little community centre there as well. HVAC infrastructure, we have a fairly regular investment in HVAC infrastructure, but there are some big ticket projects coming in terms of refurbishing the HVAC across the road here at the Art Gallery and Town Hall, down at Dapto Ribbonwood Centre. And finally, we have a fairly steady program to replace sporting amenities across the LGA. We get a lot of feedback on the quality of our sporting amenities. We definitely know there's some areas where we need to improve. So just as an example, over the next few years, we're looking to upgrade Thomas Gibson Oval, JJ Kelly Park and JJ Masters Oval amenities, bringing all those facilities up to contemporary standards around accessibility and equitable playing between gender and female participants. Just leave that on screen for a minute. We just wanted to flag, there's some indicative, no need to rush to write this down. The presentation will be made available afterwards, but we just wanted to put up on screen some indicative timeframes around when some of these bigger ticket infrastructure projects will go to market. But to get more information about some of our upcoming tender opportunities, I really want to encourage everyone to hop onto Council's website and look at our infrastructure delivery program. So our infrastructure delivery program, it goes on exhibition every April, and it's adopted by Council in June every year. And looking at how we've programmed these projects gives you a pretty good idea of when we're likely to be going to tender for some of these works. as we update this document and it does get adopted by council, it's on our website, it's live. Sorry, it's not quite live, it gets updated as we adopt. But you can see what works we have planned across our city for the next 4 years. And with that, I might hand over to Nikki. Here we go.
Hi guys, how are you going? My name is Nikki Romanchkevich and I am the Procurement and Supply Manager here at Wollongong City Council. First of all, thank you so much everyone for attending. It's really great to see so many suppliers both in person and online, and welcome back to those ones who have been here before. I hope you do learn something new. My slides are a bit more boring. We go through a bit more legislation, the framework, processes, policies, but I will give you some insight around some upcoming panels as well. So as you would know, council provides a wide variety of services. We have over 700 building facilities. We've got libraries, pools, beaches, everything out there. So where council, as our workforce, can't deliver those services to the community, that's when we approach the market. So we come out to you guys on suppliers and request for quote, either via tender, quotation or email. So for our procurement processes, they are determined by the estimated value of the goods. So what I'm going to go through today is basically show you guys how we approach the market based on the value and the different options that our council staff have. Now, our council employees are empowered to make those purchasing decisions themselves. We have some framework and some policies and some systems to control, but it is a decentralised procurement process at our council. So I'll jump into the next work. So for the larger works, we progress these actions via processes of formal quotation and tendering, and we do have to comply by the Local Government Act. So council and other local agencies are required to go out to tender if those works or services exceed 250,000. But this slide here is our purchasing thresholds. So it is up to each council to determine those purchasing thresholds. So these may not be the same purchasing thresholds with other councils that you deal with, but each council will determine these thresholds up until the point of 250,000. As I mentioned, above that is then a legislative requirement to go out to tender. So for Wollongong City Council, we have, as you can see, the top level, which is less than 10,000. So if we require goods or services below that value, it's up to the employee to seek a quote. And if they receive one quote that provides best value or is determined to provide best value, they can proceed with that engagement. As you see, as we continue up and increase that value, it actually requires a more complex process. So 10 to 50,000, our employees are required to obtain 2 written comparative quotes, do an evaluation, determine best value, and then engage. Between 50 to 150 is 150,000. Sorry, is 3 written comparative quotes up to 150. And then above 150 is when we come into a bit more of a formal process, and you'll see a lot more documentation coming out. So you usually get the scope of works or the specification, but once we exceed that 150, you're getting a lot more documentation and there's a lot more requirements to comply with. So on the next slide, I'll explain what you'll usually see in a package for a formal quotation. And then once we exceed the 250, it's a tender. So under the Act, there's quite a lot of different bits and pieces that we have to comply with. It has to be advertised for a minimum 21 days. It has to be open to the public so everyone can download those documents. Everyone can provide a submission. There's some pretty tight policies and processes around it. We can't accept late submissions. So if you're 10 minutes late, you're out. So there's some really tight frameworks that we have to comply with as a council. Okay, so for high value, I just refer to high value as over 150. Competitive submissions are sought via our different software platforms. So Wollongong City Council uses 2 software platforms. We use Tenderlink when we go out to the open market. So if you are looking for any of our Wollongong City Council formal quotations or tenders, they'll be live up on Tenderlink. And as I mentioned, for tenders, they have to be published for a minimum of 21 days. Formal quotations and expressions of interest. So you might see an EOI. We do EOIs if we want to establish a panel of suppliers. We also do EOIs if we want to run a selective tender, so in which case we may not want to make certain confidential information available to the whole market. So we will do an EOI. We will then establish who is capable and who has the capacity to deliver those projects, and we take them through to a selective tender. So everyone still has the opportunity to submit for that EOI, but then we'll only take a selective number of suppliers through to the actual select tender, and that's an option under the Act as well. Vendor panel. So we use another software system called Vendor Panel, and that's when we go out for panel quotations. So it's basically a panel has been established through a tender, and John will speak later about the local government procurement panels. But Wollongong City Council, we also establish panels as well. So for example, our trades and building services panel. So we've gone out, we've established that panel, and then we'll go out via vendor panel to those suppliers and request quotes through vendor panel. So it doesn't go through open. It has gone to open to create that panel, but then we'll start using a vendor panel software solution to get our quotes. So this is just, I guess, why we use these software solutions. So Tenderlink, it enhances efficiency and probity. It is a commercial software system used to publish our formal quotations, EOIs and tenders. It's a way to manage the process. So publication forum questions. So you can't just reach out to a council officer or employee and ask questions. It has to go through the forum, and then the answer is provided to everyone that has downloaded those submissions or has gone in and requested to submit a tender. You'll see that addendums will go through there as well. So if you are submitting for a tender or formal quotation, make sure that you're reading any of those addendums, because you need to confirm that you have read and understood them if you are looking to submit. Lance will probably go through some different addendums that they put through, but it is important to make sure you're downloading them, reading them, confirming you understand. Because within those 21 days, we may need to make, some change. We do try and provide everything up front, but if there does need to be a change, it will come through as an addendum. And one of those examples may be just an extension of the closing date. So if we have had a lot of suppliers come in and say, we just need some extra time, we can't get our submission in time, council may make that determination to extend. It would come through as an addendum. So everyone knows they've got an extra couple of days. So we try and be as open to the market as possible. To access the tenders being called by Wollongong City Council, you can register. Registering with Tenderlink does increase, I guess, the notifications that you receive. So you actually register for a category, and then you'll be notified of any tenders that have that category. And that's for all councils as well. So not just us, but whatever councils out there, local agencies are using it. So that's Tenderlink, and then vendor panel. So council also procures via the established panels, and these opportunities have been let to the market, and then we've established the panel of suppliers. So what council employees, or when we log into vendor panel, what we see through these panels, we see the approved suppliers. We can also filter on the location of suppliers. So this is really handy where, for example, there's a local government procurement panel available. You can filter on the location of suppliers. So council employees would hence invite local suppliers first. If we didn't receive, if there wasn't any suppliers or we didn't receive a satisfactory response, that's when we would extend outside of our LGA. But it is really easy to filter on local suppliers. We also see pricing schedules. So you need to ensure that if you are a supplier on one of these panels, that you keep your pricing schedules up to date. If you've had an increase, go in and increase your schedules. Otherwise, council are looking at your old pricing schedules, and that's what we're holding you to, because that's what's available to us. We also can see the demonstrated experience and the capability and qualifications of suppliers. So anything that you've uploaded to get onto that tender, council has access to. It is important, and if I guess I hope you take a lot more away, but it's really important. It is your responsibility as a supplier to make sure that you're keeping your contact details up to date. So our council employees are sending out requests for quotes, and they're going to whoever your nominee is there on vendor panel. If you guys aren't updating them, you're not getting those RFQs. Okay, so it's really important. Even add multiple contacts. I think I've seen some companies have 5 or 6, and that's really important to make sure that you guys have up-to-date contacts. So you're getting our RFQs and you're responding to them. When you respond to an RFQ, you also have the opportunity to provide like a comment as to why. So if you decline, that's fine, but we do want to see obviously your reasoning for declining. If you're not interested in doing work with us, let us know that and we'll stop inviting you. We'll invite other suppliers on board. If you've got a project and you actually just don't have the capacity, but you really do want to continue doing business with us, let us know that. Okay, so there's just a comment that you can quite simply just give us the rationale as to why you're declining that request. So we understand basically if you guys want to continue the work with us or not and continue being invited. Okay, so what to expect? When we go out for a formal quotation or a tender, you'll usually see as a minimum 4 documents which will come out. So our form of quote or our form of tender, that's the questions we need you to answer. So that document will usually come out as a Word document, and it's asking you to provide your previous qualifications, your experience, sorry, your staff qualifications, your previous experience, your methodology, your references, and all of those bits and pieces. So you need to give us as much information as you can, because whatever is in that submission is what we're evaluating you against. Just if you have tendered before, you'd note that we have, the first section is usually us asking for 2 or 3 references. You can't put council as a reference because we're not going to call ourselves, but you can use us for previous experience. So sometimes we've seen suppliers who have worked with us previously and done an amazing job on a project or service, and they haven't included themselves in the previous experience section. So you can nominate council in those ones, and we encourage you to. So that's a document you need to really put all your effort into. The invitation to quote or tender is just like an instruction. So it's basically saying how to submit, what the close date is, what the mandatory criteria, the evaluating criteria, and some bits and pieces around how to do a tender. It's pretty similar. You'll probably see it with most councils, but it's more of an instructions. So read through that as an instruction, but then put your time and effort into the form of quote or tender. The specification, sometimes scope of works, whatever you want to refer to it, detailed descriptions of the requirements. We will try and provide you as much information as we can about what we expect for that goods or services so that you guys can price accurately. And there's no, we don't get into an engagement where you guys don't understand what the expectation is, so we will try and provide as much information. And if you have any questions, again, put them in the forum questions in the forum on Tenderlink so we can answer to the whole market. We'll provide the contract. So we'll have the proposed contract, which includes the terms and conditions, which we're looking to engage you under, the companies under. So have a read through them. We do have times where suppliers will come back with departures or qualifications. We will consider them, but more often than not, we will send basically a response back saying, please withdraw those in order to continue. We want pretty much a fair playing ground with everyone. So the contracts usually are quite standard, unless there's a small risk to council, which we may accept, and then we would advise. Addressing criteria. So I'm not going to dig too much into this because let's all kind of go a bit further into it, but just really, I guess, just that focus really being on addressing the criteria as much as possible. So the mandatory is a pass or fail. So if you haven't met the mandatory requirements, we won't even go into evaluating, because that's just basically our time of our resources if you haven't met those mandatory. So mandatory, you're usually going to see like a financial capacity assessment. So council will say, we would like to, if required, we may undertake a financial capacity assessment on the first ranked supplier, in which case we engage a third party and they'll go through your financials. They'll give us a score back out of 10, and then we decide whether that risk is fine, satisfactory. If it's not satisfactory, what controls can we put in place if required, or is it too risky for us to do business with that organisation? So that's that financial capacity assessment. We'll ask for referees, often like an accredited work health and safety management system. And what else do we have? Financial capacity assessment. That's about it for the mandatory. There might be more in there if there's certain certifications or working with Sydney Water or whatever it might be. But then our accessible criteria, so once you've made that hurdle, then you're providing all that, basically selling yourself, selling us your experience, your qualifications, why we should do business with you guys, and what makes you better than the rest of the market out there. So that's the form of tender or formal quotation. So this bit here, so Wollongong City Council adopted, our council a while back, it might have been 2019 or 20, endorsed this mandatory criteria for strengthening of local economic capacity. So all of our formal quotations and tenders above 150,000 require a criteria in there, which refers to the strengthening of local economic capacity, which must have a 10% weighting. Now, recently, probably in the last month or so, we actually have changed the sub-criteria to make it even more favourable to local companies. So before that, it was 5 sub-criteria, if you've seen it before. The first one was, where's your business located, your subby, and then it broke it into materials, subbies. So basically, I guess a company outside of our LGA could still score a 4 out of 5, okay? Because even though they weren't based here, if they could confirm that they're subcontractors, their labour, their materials, they could still score 4. That's not the case anymore. So the new sub-criteria is actually broken down into 4. If your company, I guess the business address or corporate headquarters are located in the Wollongong LGA, so within our local government area, you move straight to question 3 and you score 3 out of 5 already. Okay, so if you're outside of that, you don't get that 3. If a company does have a permanent office or work location, they can score on question 2. But they will not be able to get the full marks. So we're really leaving it up to a local question 1 and then move to the 3rd and 4th question, just to make it a lot easier. So you'll start seeing that in basically we've updated all of our templates and everything. So that'll be in all the documents going out now, just to make it easier for local suppliers and also to give them an extra leg up as well. So social procurement, for those who haven't heard about social procurement or aren't aware of it, social procurement involves council using our procurement processes and purchasing power to generate positive social value above the beyond of the cost of goods services. So we might have like the direct approach where we are directly engaging a social enterprise, Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander business, the Australian disability enterprises in order to give back to the community. So that direct approach, we do have targets to increase our expenditure year on year and to increase the number of suppliers in our database who we are doing business with as well. The indirect approach is more where we're engaging a primary or a principal contractor, and then they're using their subcontractors and giving value back to the community that way. So we do have our social sustainable procurement policy, which is a council policy up on our website, but we are really focusing over the next 12 months and continuing to increase wherever we can. There's also an exemption in the Local Government Act, which allows us to directly, or we're exempt from tendering if there's an Australian disability enterprise who's able to actually deliver those services for us. So we do have some exemptions available to us, but it's very limited, and we have used them in the past. Oh, so this slide here is just in regards to, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have some pretty stringent policies, procedures and processes that we have to comply with, and one of those is council can only approve tenders that are completed in full and submitted before the closing time. So it really needs to make sure it's by tender link. Don't upload it in the last 10 minutes and your internet crashes or something. You still have the option. There is a tender box down the bottom. It's usually got a bit of litter in there, but if you're keen to submit a hard copy, there's always one available as well. But it's really important to make sure that you are getting your submissions in on time. The worst thing for us is if you guys send it through saying we missed the timeline, you've just put a lot of your resources, a lot of your costs into submitting, and we actually aren't even able to evaluate it. So really important to get it in. Download it when it first goes live, understand what the requirements that we're asking, and start working on it. Don't leave it to the last day is basically what I'm getting at. Missing out on submitting your responses in time could mean that you're not included on a council panel for several years. So some of our panels and our panel contracts go for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got extension options. So just that time frame, get it in on time. Conserve accreditation. So for our larger construction companies out there, you may already be aware, or you're probably already a party to Conserve. So it's a third party that undertakes basically the check of insurances and certificate of currencies for council. Kiama, Shoalhaven, Shoal Harbour all use this this third party. So they go through and they're checking public liability, professional indemnity, workers' compensation, motor vehicle insurance. So you don't undertake or don't go register for them unless you've been given a letter of success and we've confirmed that we will be engaging you. There is a cost associated to it. So just make sure that you're aware, and it does have it in our documents, that you accept that when we do business with you. So you'll get an email from them and they'll ask what those requirements are. Contractor performance report. So I've kind of spoken about doing business with council, but once you actually start commencing doing business with us and we build that relationship, we do encourage and we do contractor performance reports. So this is basically we're going out with, we've got a template. They can be periodic ones, they can be end of contract, or they can be for unsatisfactory performance. So we really want to make that relationship and regularly having, we're telling you about feedback about how we think you guys are going, and you're getting that opportunity to respond as well. So this records the contractor performance against KPIs and different areas around safety, commercial, where we think you guys are rating, and then we also give you guys the opportunity to respond to us as well, and we encourage you to respond. So there will also be a suitability for future work. So keep in mind that if there is some underperformance and there's some non-compliance or that we will provide that information. And if we do not get a response or those non-conformances aren't improved, then we may look at not doing business with you in the future if it's unsuitable for works. But we hope not to see that, obviously. The contractor acknowledges that council reserves the right to use these reports in the evaluation of the award of future works as well. So make sure you are responding to those. If you're not happy with, I guess, the way that we've assessed you, make sure you're providing that response within 10 days for us to record that as well and work through any issues. Okay. Upcoming panels. So Chris spoke about some of the major projects that are coming up. They're probably going to be more engagements with a primary or a principal contract to undertake those. These are more panels where we are going out over the next basically 12 months to establish some of our 3 of our largest panels. They're all up for renewal at the same time. So we'll have a minor civil works panel. This is the road, footpath, shared pathway construction, stormwater, curb and gutter, guardrail maintenance, subsoil drainage installation, service lowering. Don't ask me any technical questions about these. I don't write the specs, I'm not sure. But this one's due for release at late 2024. And there is an expected expenditure under this panel between 5 to 9 million based on the operational requirements and budgets over the next 5 years. So depending what jobs come up and what our crews can't undertake, then this is where we'll be using this panel. The tender for trades and building services panel. So again, when Chris mentioned the 700 buildings, all those buildings have got a lot of maintenance requirements on them. So we will be going out. One of our other large current panels is up for renewal: electrical services, plumbing, HVAC, gutter cleaning, roller doors, graffiti removal, building works, carpentry services. So that's due for release early 2025. Both of these contracts will be longer term ones, so 3+1+1 or 5-year contracts where we're building a panel of approved suppliers. Sometimes we will go out and get a primary supplier and build that relationship up. If a supplier isn't performing, this is probably our biggest one in regards to the amount of schedules or disciplines under this tender. So this is design and technical services panel. So this is a panel of consultants for a whole range. So if this one comes out and you do submit, give the panel some time, because I think last time we had about 99 approved suppliers under this. So there's a lot of submissions for the panel to review. So it's probably not going to be quick feedback where they're going to be going through a very long process of downloading all submissions, assessing. This is expected of 8 to 10 million over the next 5 years and anticipated release of late 2024. So the panel are currently just working through all the different specifications, the schedules in order for this one to go out. But same thing, you'll still get the form, the invite, the contract, and then it'll just be your schedule to respond to. The New South Wales Small Business Commissioner. So I've just put some links on this website. It's actually the Doing Business with Your Local Council. Have a read. It basically just summarises everything we're talking about today. It's a really good document. It's really easy, user-friendly, how to prepare, what you need to submit, what to expect after a tender goes out. Lance will go through tender debriefs as well. We really encourage suppliers to contact us and ask why you weren't successful, and then we can provide feedback in order to improve your future submissions. There's also just a couple other documents on there to have a read through. So the Small Businesses Insurances fact sheet, and then just modern slavery information for small businesses. So there is some new legislation that come out, I think it was 2018, around modern slavery and just organisations and large companies ensuring that their supply chain doesn't have any modern slavery throughout it. So making sure that your employees are paid fairly, there's no modern slavery risks. Now, some industries are more prone to modern slavery. So if we do send out some surveys and we say, you're a high risk supplier, it's not so much a supplier, you're in an industry that is more prone to modern slavery acts. Okay, tenders, EOIs and quotes. So on our website, we publish current tenders that are available and how to link into the tender link. We also show recently closed ones, and then we also have recently determined tenders. So the recently determined tenders basically have all who's actually submitted. So you can go in and see who's actually submitted for those. There's also some doing business with council where this will be published. We have our purchasing terms and conditions, our contracts register, so a council under the GIPA reporting requirements, so Government Information Public Access Act, we have to make public all contracts that we are under over 150,000. So we also have a contract register, all councils should, which has all our various contracts, live current ones. And then opportunities for artists and performers. And I've just put some extra, I guess, some links on here as well for you guys, just as additional resources to have a look at: tender link, procure point, vendor panel. So these are just all the different links that council employees use. So that's about it. I'll pass over to Lance Hazel, who is our major projects manager, to go through improving submissions.
Okay, cool. Good morning. I need to put my glasses on to see the panel. Sign of old age. I'm going to go through what you should put in your tender to make sure that you've had the best shot of being able to land the job. As Nikki pointed out, anything over $250,000, we actually, by law, have to go out to an open tender unless we do an EOI. A tender panel assesses the tender package that's submitted, and it'll include the schedules and stuff that Nikki went through. Just make sure that you actually read the documents, populate the information that's been requested, and put your best foot forward. As Nikki pointed out, if there's any changes or addenda during the tender period, we will issue those and make sure that you acknowledge that you've received those. Two types of assessment criteria. It's a bit of Nikki's already been through. Mandatory criteria, referees, financial, WHS. If it's a public space, we don't often require the site inspection to be mandatory, but if it is a space where we need to coordinate access, we will maybe have that as mandatory criteria as well. Accessible criteria would include cost to council, previous experience, staff qualifications, proposed subbies. Don't assume that we know you. If you've done business with us before, that's great, but please assume that we don't know anything about you and you have to tell us everything to make sure that we understand all of the skills and facilities and things that you can provide us. Project schedule, WHS, and Nikki touched on strengthening of local economy. As I'm pointing out, the quality of the information that you submit is really important. That is what the tender panel assesses you against. So make sure that you fill out the form of tender properly. There's a Schedule A. Avoid generic statements or cut and pasting. I know, having worked in private, putting together a tender is a big commitment. It does take a lot of time and energy. And when we sit and read them, we often find that someone's cut and pasted from and they're referencing other jobs or whatever. Just make sure you have a read of it, that you're happy that you're submitting it. Don't restate the scope of works that we've included in the specification. Go through and tell us how you're going to deliver the job. Okay, step through. And often you'll find a good methodology of how you would deliver the job will link closely to your project schedule and your tasks. And it just gives us a really good understanding that you've got your head around the job and you know how you're going to deliver it. So that's that. Previous experience. Look for, if we're advertising a tender and you go, that's us, we've done a lot of those jobs, look for jobs that match up with similar scale, scope and complexity. So if there's some risky items on a job and you've done a job elsewhere like that, just say that, put that all in there, okay? The other thing that we often look for is the experience of your proposed contractors. So if you've got your subcontractor, you've just nominated them, don't just say their name. Tell us that maybe they have 25 years experience in there, you know, particularly if there's specific special skills that you need in the team. Make sure that all that information is there. And as I said, your project schedule's got to comply with the dates. If we've been specific on start and completion dates. That usually ties to grant funding and other things. Make sure that you've got a realistic program to hit those dates. If you have gone through the submission, got your head around it, and you go, you're dreaming. That's not going to happen. Put the questions for that in the TenderLink forum, okay? Put it out there and just say, look, you know, realistically, we're not going to be able to hit that timeline, okay? The contractors that are skilled in this area, you'll have an understanding of how you deliver that job, probably better than some of the people once you've got your head around it on the tender panel. You don't tell a contractor how to do his job, you know? So if we've included stuff in our submission that you would like to question this, okay? As I said, make sure you complete the Schedule A. And sometimes the way that we break down the schedule may not be the way that you and your subbies break down the schedule, but you've got to try and transpose it across as best you can to our Schedule A, because our Schedule A is how we make sure that you haven't missed an item. So sometimes people will say, oh, included above, included above, included above, and just give us a lump sum price. That's how do we assess whether you've covered everything, you know? Because we'll go through, we'll also check your math and make sure that your bottom line offer actually matches up to what you've included in your Schedule A. Conforming bids. So what we're looking for there is we've got a specification, contract clauses, we've got all that stuff out for you. You've assessed it, you've come back. If you want to get creative and go, I've got a better way of doing this, I want to put in a non-conforming bid, the tender panel can't consider that unless you put in a conforming bid. So make sure that you put in a conforming bid saying, here's what you guys have asked for, I can do that, but I've actually got a better idea or a more cost-effective idea, and here's my other idea, okay? But I can't look at the other idea if you haven't put in a conforming bid. And try and keep your offer as close to conforming as possible. It does create a lot of time and effort to unpick any of the qualifications and departures. And also it could put you in a position where your offer cannot be further considered because it's non-conforming. I'm looking for apples to apples. I'm looking to make sure that I'm comparing everything the same, okay? One of the things that we do provide is tender debriefs. So if you were unsuccessful, ask for a tender debrief. And it's not just a matter of calling the officer who was doing the tender. A tender debrief is a formal process where you come in, you would meet the tender panel, have your list of questions, and we can't share any information from other people's bids because that's their IP. But what we can do is we can say, here's areas where you can improve your submission next time to make sure that you put the best foot forward, okay? There we are. I'll hand over. So just that one there. Yes.
Morning, everyone. My name's John Pennock. I'm the Business Development Manager for LGP. So I look after the southern region, so that's 47 councils, and that includes Wollongong Council. I'm from Sydney, but I feel like a local. Will be my third time in a month. I'll be down here for various events, but joining me today is Alison Lyons, Category Manager for LGP. I'll just give you an idea. We have about 35 contracts, and Alison's portfolio looks after some things such as minor and major civil works, professional consulting services, playgrounds, open spaces, modular structures, exterior lighting, recreation and associated infrastructure, industrial construction, electrical and general hardware, horticulture, pest, pool and waste management, mobile garbage bins and associated products, asbestos removal. So quite a large portfolio and an important portfolio for council, and we see a lot of spend come through that. So just what I'll be covering today, and it's more about what's in it for yourselves, but I have to go over who LGP is and what our space is So I'll go through an overview, why council uses LGP. We have a relationship with the full 128 councils, and it goes from it goes quite deep. It's not I deal with Nikki, but it goes quite deep into the infrastructure managers, fleet managers, and all sorts. I'll touch on contract spend from council, and then the benefits and how do you get on LGP panel? What should you be looking for? What should you be reading? So who are we? Little one. We're a business arm of local government New South Wales, LG New South Wales. So they're an advocate for local councils. Do a lot of work at the high level. We are a prescribed body under Section 55 of the Local Government Act. And just to give you an idea of what we do, and the things we do is at the core of what we have is our contracts. So the 35 plus contracts enable speed. It's quicker for suppliers to access, and it gives a lot of visibility. But we do a lot of work around consulting, so supporting councils in that space. We run network events, and those network events are always about upskilling and training and getting councils information. So we do those in the regions, and also we have our conference, which is coming up. We have a sustainable choice division. So we do actually have a modern slavery kit for small, medium-sized businesses. So even though we are looking after the councils, as in, you know, that's who our customers are, we value our suppliers. So we do have some toolkits that are available. So I suppose while I'm highlighting that, I'll talk about our website dottedly along this presentation, because there are some things that you should look at our website and read about. And we also have a training division, and we do have training for businesses in our office in Clarence Street. We did have a bunch of people come in for that. We have regular training sessions. So, and those were for some corporate customers as well. So it's not just council focused. So have a look. If you see something, reach out to any of the divisions. My face is up there on the website, so I'm happy for you to contact myself, and we can talk through some things. So why councils use LGP contracts? We run a tender process that's in line with the Office of Local Government. So it's something that we look at. You should probably get familiar with the regulations. It's all about compliance. Contract management, robust contract management, and address compliance, probity, sustainability, and sustainability. It's a streamlined process. So rather than responding to multiple tenders, and I'm going to probably say something that's going to contradict Nikki and council a little bit, but when we run the tender, you're just responding to quotes. And there are certain things that are in there that we've already asked as a business. So councils don't need to councils don't need to put them in their quotes and so forth. You probably need to understand when you get dealing with this, understand what's in vendor panel, and the councils, we communicate what the councils should be putting in there. So you don't need to do multiple replies to your insurances or certain things that we've already asked. And we're always talking to councils about that. And then there's business support. So we have myself, but we also have category managers. We have someone in our business support team that will always support you along the journey. So LGPs, we're about 45 staff. We're contactable, we're accountable. You know, might have a crack at state government, but once you start dealing with certain state governments, it's sort of a little bit like up here. You could pick up a phone, you can get out my phone number, you can contact us. We're contactable. We're happy to speak with suppliers, whether they're not on the panel, and how to get on the panel, whether they are on the panel. We're happy to talk through things. And councils, I'm a link into councils, so I've got to be a bit careful when I'm talking to suppliers, but I'm happy to. I do talk with suppliers. So when you're working with LGP, you can actually direct engage. Nikki put up the spend, so you know $0 right up to $250,000. It's very handy to get to know the council's policies, whether it's Wollongong or Shell Harbour or Shellhaven. Get to know their procurement policies, because they can actually direct engage, and that's why the pricing is important. Keep your pricing up to date, so they can do. But the whole idea is also we have an X amount of suppliers on a contract. You have a category, and the council should be pushing out quotes to get competitive pricing. You know, they're looking after the public's money, but you know, and also Also, once you're doing work with council, they do talk to each other. So, you know, it's a network of, it's an importance to get in there, get the work, do it right, as I said, do it, you know, serve the community, do a good job, and you will get referrals internally from different departments and into other councils. So it's a good space to be in, and we've seen some companies grow from being this small right up to larger companies. So in terms of Wollongong Council, there was about $75 million reported in over those 3 financial years. Top 4 spend areas, we've got roads, construction and operations, IT and telecom, plant and vehicles. But there's some other key areas, playground and open spaces, plant and gardens, waste management and landfill. We had a milestone, we've just hit a milestone where we've just hit $1 billion worth of spend through our contracts in FY24, and a lot of hard work and a lot of support. So we're linked in. If you're a Wollongong Council, if you're dealing with Wollongong Council and you want to grow your footprint, be part of that 128 councils, you can certainly do that, or you can keep it focused and you don't have to worry about, you know, councils up at, you know, Griffith or Wagga or up in the northern areas. You can expand your footprint in the southern region. Quite like it when you do it in the southern region because that's an area I look after. So the benefits, easier to do business. Councils can engage with you directly. It's all through an RFQ, a request for quote. Keep saying that because I do hear even from council, it's like we're running a tender. It's like, no, you're doing a quote. You're quoting, we've run the tender, you're doing a quote. So you're, as a company, you should be responding to quotes. If you've got a forum, which is, it's great Wollongong do this, and you think council is actually asking things that are already part on, you can see it on vendor panel. Why are you asking us again? It's in vendor panel, it's there, it's time, it takes us time. So you can remind council, it's in vendor panel, why do you keep asking us? It's all about process improvement. So access to vendor panel, we use vendor panel. I come from the private sector. I've spoken to other people coming from the private sector, and the beauty of it is it's just one, we don't have something like this. And vendor panel is that central point. So we hold our contract information. You yourselves will have built your profile. It's important you do it. It's important you keep your information up to date because that's how you will get communicated. But council people will talk to each other, and then if you have a line about your business, I had someone saying, oh, they came through to me, oh, we do sheds for FOGO. You know, FOGO's been mandated across the 128 councils. How do I promote myself? What do I do? And I'm like, you need to put it up in your bright letters, go and promote yourself to council, but put it in your heading in vendor panel. We are doing sheds for FOGO, because if council goes in and sees, oh, that's one, oh, great. They know exactly what you do. And so I'm using that, just keep everything up to date. Think about how you promote yourself. And it's a window to council it is. And it's not as expansive, the supplier list in LGP. It's about 1,500 companies across our contracts. It's not like a state government contract where it's lists and lists. I've got a friend who works in it and he just picks the top off. He just picks the top one because it's like 300, 400, 500 companies that might be in a category. So we're very much more focused. Save time and money. So tenders cost money. Someone was saying it's about $20,000. You can probably correct me. No, I saw some stats. It said it costs about $20,000 to run a tender. You have to have it out for 21 days. You need to do this public consultation. When you're using LGP, you could put a quote out. The council can put a quote out for 3 or 4 days. They can, if they know who they're going to, they can get things done and get things done quickly. So you take roads. Roads was about, say, less than a third, just less than a third of our contract spend it was over that bigger picture. Councils needed to get things done. So basically they were like, great, we've got approved suppliers, we've got all this information, a tender's been run, I'm just going to push out quotes, give them my program of work or do individual. We always suggest program of work, and suppliers, I assume, would appreciate a program of work because then they know and they can plan. So the whole idea of where we are and what we sit is to get things done for council. And then, as I said, grow your business. You can, as part of vendor panel, you can circle it off. So you can say, I want to deal with these areas because, unless you've got capability to do it, you don't want to have councils from other regions contacting you. But you can grow your footprint in the area, and doing things like this and attending things like this is great for that. And we've got support from LGP. As I said, we're not afraid to speak with you. You know, I had a council looking at a state government contract for a certain thing, and they said to me, how do I contact them? They're asking me, how do I contact the state government department? I said, I looked online, I said, you can email them. And we have phone numbers, we have emails, but our emails will come back to you. So sounds like I'm beating up on state government, aren't I? We were talking about, our heading was about what we've got planned for suppliers. LGP's recently put out a survey and we got some feedback. We'll be putting out some activities and engagements, and no doubt the business has got a strong focus on suppliers. So we did some webinars in the past. We haven't got those sorted as yet, but I've put some key areas for yourselves to look at. So, and if you can take a look and so forth, you may not be able to jump on a panel straight away, but probably one of the key things I'll say is apply to become a contractor. Take time to read it and see what you need to do. There's a point where it says register to become an approved supplier. So you basically will go into eProcure, Tenderlink, and say, I want to be notified when things are going to happen. So make sure you set that up correctly. Look at the tender program. We've just recently done that. We've got a whole bunch of information on there. So you might say, oh, great, I've seen this. We've attended today, want to jump on. We can't just let individual companies on. We have to push out, we have to open up our contract, and we then put it out to market, and then we'll have suppliers respond. We'll go through that, and we're not looking for a winner. We're looking for a panel supplier that will uphold standards for council, and we will then, there's some processes get you onto the panel. We have gone to something called dynamic contracting, which allows us to run 10 years. So if you look on our website and you see something that's like, I know, 10 years, don't be afraid. It's not blocked out for 10 years. LGP, we had to go through a lot of external legal advice on this. It took about 18 months because of our prescription and our status, our unique position for servicing councils, and we went through all that. And now we've got longer contracts. So what it means for yourselves is once you're on that contract, you don't have to do any retendering. But what it means for Alison is she looks at strengths and weaknesses in the market and changes and says, we can open this up. So we can add, I'll use this term because people know cybersecurity, right? We had a contract for IT, 3 years +1 locked out. We couldn't add a category. Cybersecurity is one of the biggest things that council or you as a business holder has. So what we did was we went to a dynamic contracting model, and this could be minor and major works. It could be, professional consulting. It could be other areas. And if we see there's a demand for that, and we have to have that category on our contract, and we accept feedback from yourselves, we will look to open up the contract. And it's a lot of work involved, but we're quite willing to do it because what it means to council is, and to suppliers, as markets change, councils can then access those contracts. So, yeah, when you look on our website through the tender program, if you've got any questions, because you might see something that's, the tender program is coming up, but then you might go into our contracts and tenders and see something and go, we fit under there. When's it going to be up? Ask the suppliers email. Ask us when we're planning. We may not be able to give you an answer right now, but we have a program of works and we'll be able to tell you. But then go back to how to become a contractor, learn a little bit about the market if you're not dealing with councils. Read a bit of information, look at council policy, get yourself understanding around the market, because once you get on it, it can take off really quick, but you have to understand a little bit about it. I've come from the private sector, so I had to learn a lot about the rules and regulations. And then once you're on the panel, we have an approved contractors section. So that's about all for myself. We look forward to speaking or meeting or chatting, but any questions can go through Supplies LGP, and our phone number's there. Thank you.
Alrighty, I think we just covered slides. So we've got plenty of time now for questions and answers. So there has been some questions online. Josh? Yep, there's been a few questions online. So Josh is going to go through those. We will direct the question at whatever panelists that best best comes to or best suits. And we will also provide a Q&A sheet at the end. So any questions that we're unable to answer on the spot because it's a bit tricky and we may need to take offline to provide something back, we'll take those on board as well and make sure. But I'll pass over to Josh to facilitate Q&A.
Hello, I'm Josh. I'm the Senior Procurement and Contract Partner here at Council. And with my lovely roving microphone over there, we'll be doing online for questions first that have come through, and then we'll be opening it up to you guys to answer. I would say if you've got a question that involves any sort of specific confidential information you request, don't ask it here. Reach out to us and we're happy to answer that at a different time. So we've had a few come through. I'm going to say Chris did a fantastic job because no one's asked any jobs specifically for you. We have a few for Nikki, which you can come and answer. The first one was asked by Anonymous. When talking about the formal and quote tender, they asked, how about jobs under $150,000?
So at the start, I mentioned how we empower our employees to go out and request quotes. So if it's below 150, we will, if there's no panel contracts, it'll come out via email. So it is just council employees sending out an email with a scope of works and asking the suppliers that they're aware of, basically to quote on those jobs. As it still follows the under 10. So if it's under 10,000, it's by the best advantage and a council employee would ask a quotation. And if it is delivered within budget best value, they could basically directly engage and continue with that. Our software solution that we use, our financial management information system, doesn't allow an employee to approve their own requisition, so they can't just go and raise a rec and approve it themselves. There is, we do have financial delegations which are aligned to different position base. So they would have to submit that to their manager, and that would be a second person vetting that that quote that has been received delivers, I guess, the outcomes and does deliver best value. So yeah, via email, but if there is panel contracts, even if it's under 150, we will still use vendor panel as well, but it'll be just a lot less, I guess, formalized process. It'll usually just be a request for quote with the scope of works or the spec. You won't have the whole invitation, the proposed contract and those bits and pieces. So but email.
Don't go too far. I've got another one. This is actually two questions asked by Carol and Peter. They asked one about the design and technical services panel, which I can actually answer. It says, will it be advertised via TenderLink or vendor panel? It'll be on TenderLink because it will be a tender. And Peter asked, which you can answer, do you have an expected spend through the trade and building services panel?
So that one at the moment, so we're looking at doing actually a two-step approach. So at the moment, that's a trades and building services panel. And as we've seen, it has electrical, plumbing, painters, etc. So there's quite an extensive list. This time around, there will be, it's going to be based on two different approaches. We're going to have a tender, which is going to go for a basic requesting a pricing schedule. So it'll be a trades and building schedule of rates, and it will be up to the suppliers. So that's for like the planned maintenance. So the ongoing maintenance of building facilities, we will assess the schedule based on those, and then we'll engage either a primary with reserve suppliers. Just depends what discipline it is. So the panel are going through at the moment and establishing the tender, but then we're also going to do an EOI. So it'll be broken into two, and the EOI will be basically project work coming up. So it won't be a schedule of rates because we won't actually know what the schedule looks like. So that EOI is going to establish a list of suitable suppliers that we will then go out and request quotes from. So we already have gone through the top level stuff to ensure that the suppliers who have submitted for that EOI are capable of doing that work, and then we'll go through and just request for quotes doing it. So I can't really commit to what that expenditure, I'd say it looks around the, again, 5 mil over the 5 years. But with those panels, they do work really well for council because we do have that option to extend them. And if we have reserve suppliers on there and a primary isn't responding or it can't keep up the works, then we can basically just bring the reserves up as well to assist with delivering whatever services are required. That a lot.
Thank you. I've got a question that came in when Lance was speaking. If you would like to answer, Lance. Carol asked, do you have a list of council prerequisites for tendering, such as ISO 9001?
So each tender will have its own specific requirements. So there's some basic stuff that, you know, we always do financial checks, reference checks. A lot of our major projects now, we want an independent certified WHS system. and environmental systems, but others will be project specific.
Got one for John, which I believe you may have answered, but I'll ask it again anyway. LGP panels run for a significant amount of time. They feel like this seems anti-competitive. Is there any scope for panel tenders to be run more often so they benefit both businesses and councils?
Okay, so as I mentioned, we have some contracts that you'll see with a lengthy time, so some that run, say, to 2032, hypothetically, right? And you'll see other contracts that are in the more traditional, so you'll see one that'll say 3 years plus one. So we moved a whole lot of contracts to dynamic, basically because it gave us the ability, as I mentioned, we had to go through external legal to get this sorted, to give us the ability to refresh them. So to answer the question is that we will have a schedule, and there was a talk around sort of those high volume, high spend contracts to refresh them more frequently. In terms of the ones that are 3 + 1 + 1, I'm not sure if we're going to move all of them over to dynamic contracting, but they are more rigid. So there is some, a little bit of negativity around that. Anti-competitive, I'll just give you an example. I had someone come to me at an event that I was at, LG New South Wales event, and said to me, I need to get on your panel tomorrow. And I went, great. I had a look at their stand. We had a good chat. I asked them how long they'd been in their business for. He said they've been running their business for 20 years. And I said, okay, that's great. Did you consider getting on LGP panel 20 years ago? Because we've been around since 2006. No, but I've just caught you now, so I'll have a chat with you. So I suppose where I'm going with this is that planning to get on the panel, we will give you the opportunities. If you reach out to us as a business and ask us when we'll be opening those up, we'll happily to do it. Once you're on the panel, now with the longer ones, you can be on there for 10 years without tendering. You're just answering quotes. So it's all about timing. We apologise if you feel you're getting missed out, but we do have the ability to get you on. So I like the system and I think it works really well. And yeah, we'll look to get as many suppliers on in a timely fashion within the government regulations that we have to abide by.
I'll ask one more question from our online and then we'll open it up to the room here. This is for, Nikki again. If a company has a service or product they believe would be a benefit to council, that is something currently not being requested by council, how does council engage in this case?
Okay, a tricky one. I guess every supplier thinks, your goods or service are the best, and that's why you're in the business. So we do have inventory supply stores for goods. We have basically an inventory supply store at North, South and Central. They're similar to a mini Bunnings, and again, we do have products which are replenished for our civil construction, civil maintenance, parks. So basically when the crews start the day, they rock up at the stores and they'll get whatever products they need to deliver those goods and services. So those ones are really about reaching out to the inventory supply coordinator and dropping off and just contacting them, seeing what they have in stock. And I guess if you've got a new product to the market, we can introduce it to crews out there or whoever's going to use it, but they need to provide that feedback back to us to say, yes, this product's great, it delivers what we need. Might be a chemical that does better than what they're used to. It might be a goods that does something that has met a gap that they need. So in that case, we would add that product to our stock and replenish it, similar to a Bunnings, to a Blackwoods, to any supplier out there of goods. So it's really about reaching out and contacting the inventory supply coordinator and the stores if it's a product. If it's a service, it would be contacting either, customer service, because they are going to direct you to the coordinator or the manager of that area. So as I mentioned, that we do go out and we empower the employees to make that decision and reach out to suppliers, but they're only reaching out to the suppliers that they're aware of. So they might not be aware that you're in the industry or that you deliver a service. So just getting on board with contacting council, we don't always respond back, but we'll forward that on to whoever is the relevant contact for that area and request them to reach out to you guys and ask for the goods or services, keeping in mind that we do have contracts in place, and some of them are one-on engagements, some are panels. So if we already have an established panel and we don't have the opportunity to add to that panel, it might be until once that you might not get that opportunity until that panel's expired and we go back out at that point in time. So we have started introducing, similar to what LGP have done around dynamic contracts. So a lot of our panels now we can replenish. So even though it might be a 5-year, if we feel like we don't have a great supplier base on there, or suppliers have dropped off for some reason or another, they're working in another industry, another company, we will have the opportunity now, if we've put it into our documents, to replenish throughout the contract lifetime. So you don't have to get back on if you're already on and you're approved, but it gives that opportunity to new entrants, new suppliers into the market. If you didn't have, let's say, accredited work health and safety management system when we went out to tender, but you've now got it and we replenish, it gives you that opportunity to jump on throughout the contract. So it's really about us keeping a good number of suppliers out there to deliver what we need to. So
now we'll open it up to if anyone's got any questions here. If you could raise your hand if you've got any questions, and our roving mic will go over to you. If you could just stand up, say your name, who you're directing your question to, and your question. Thank you.
G'day, Mitch, Select Civil, probably best suited to Lance. You spoke to the external certifications, but there's probably more frequently asking for like RMS pre-qualification, Sydney Water. Is that a direction that the council's going in for some of the bigger projects? Should contractors be looking for external certifications in those areas?
Yeah, it depends on the scope of works and the risk of the project profile. So, for example, we may have a project that includes adjustment of water mains and stuff. Then you're going to have to get a Sydney Water accredited subcontractor on your team. If for major roadworks, depending on whether it's an RMS road or our road or whatever, there may be a requirement for, not RMS, it's Transport for New South Wales now. There will be those. So every project is different. And if we know that having a third party check of the contractor already done up front, it just makes our job a little easier. Although we do look at making sure that that's actually an essential part of the job, as opposed to saying, well, we'll just add it in, because adding too many of those things in sometimes limits the pool of suppliers that are able to tender on the works. Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah, we can, depending on the type of project, we can sometimes specify that the principal contractor running the job requires that versus a subcontractor. You know, for example, a principal contractor for, say, electrical, you might have to have level 1, level 2, level 3, whatever's required. But often a big principal civil contractor may not have that. You know, so we would be looking at, as long as your subcontractor has those appropriate accreditations.
Thank you, Lance. Anyone else have any questions at all? Yes, gentleman over here. Just wait for your microphone to come around.
Yeah, Scott Morrison from SMEC. Probably for Nikki, this one. I know when the technical design, the T1846 panel, when that was renewed, council worked hard on getting the terms and conditions that would sort of match what the market wanted, which was really good. I do commend council on that. I suppose I was just curious to know what engagement occurs. You know, are you running industry sessions before the panel comes up to say, okay, what are your issues? You know, what insurances do you want, et cetera, et cetera? Does that make sense? I'm just curious to know that. If you could comment on that, that'd be great. Yeah. Because I suppose the reason being is that it's not Wollongong per se, although I'm curious to know what the T's and C's will be for the new renewal. But I am seeing other councils just giving out a contract and then saying blanket no. Yeah. There's no changes. And I sort of think that that's not really engaging with partners like us, because, you know, I view myself and I know others would as part of the team for council, not necessarily just someone on the outside. we're part of the team. So yeah, curious to get your feedback from a team member.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so first of all, I guess T1846 for that one, we would be looking at the terms and conditions as per last year and bringing them across, but we do have a legal team, an internal legal team, who will sit with the panel and go through the contract and basically let them know the risks of changing T's and C's and what risk that places on council, but what risk that places on the supplier. So working that out. With our panel contracts, once we submit or once we provide a proposed contract to the market, if we had any questions via the forum, again, they should come through the forum because that's where we can answer to the whole market. So if there was something specific that a lot of suppliers were giving us that feedback to say, look, suppliers can't agree to this, or this isn't fair on the suppliers, then that would give us the option to speak to the legal team and actually change that for the whole panel. So with these panels, we expect all suppliers to be gauged under the same terms and conditions. There are I know there's other organisations out there that do allow for, I guess, some suppliers to be amend the terms and conditions, but from a contract management perspective, especially for T1846, where there's such a large number of suppliers, we would be expecting all suppliers to be agreeing to the same T's and C's, just, I guess, to manage that contract moving forward. But I would recommend, if you have any qualifications or departures, to ask them in the tender period and not post tender close, because like I said, if you're asking them in the forum and you're making that visible to all other suppliers to also have a response to council and, you know, make it's not just me out of 100 suppliers, this is actually affecting 50 of you and, you know, it'll be beneficial to the whole panel, then that would provide that opportunity for council to update through an addenda, update the proposed contract and provide that out. And hopefully that would work beneficial to both parties. So I don't believe there's any tender briefing. So we hold tender debriefs, obviously, at the close of a tender, but we do also hold tender briefings throughout. I'd have to speak to the panel to see if they're actually considering doing that, at which point there might be an opportunity to provide feedback. And at that point in time, you would have the proposed contract as well. So you'd be able to see what agreement you're being engaged under. So I will take that offline and speak to the panel because it might be a great opportunity for them to say, well, let's have a briefing and hear from the industry and the suppliers and consultants to basically say what you think is fair and reasonable as well, because obviously we think we know what's fair and reasonable, but that might not be the case. And there might be some benefits for council to adjust our T's and C's as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. We got any more questions at all? Again?
Yep. Yeah. Like, yeah. Again, I'll speak. I do know that I think in one of the slides, I have to go back because I did. Yeah, where is it? Sorry, I'm just jumping back to. Wait. Yes, so pre-Christmas. Let's say pre-Christmas. Sorry. Sorry, DTS. Sorry. Anticipated release of late 2024. Yeah. So with that one, there has been a significant, you can see the disciplines on here, and obviously there's not the panels, just as an FYI, our evaluation panels are comprised of multiple people from council. So there'll usually be 2 divisional reps, for example, Lance and one of his engineers, and then there'll be an independent as well. So that independent sits in and has some knowledge, but would not be in the same division. So they kind of sit in as that independent, and then either someone from procurement or governance will sit in the initial to make sure what's going out to market ticks all of our boxes, and when submissions come back in, we sit in that final tender assessment panel meeting to ensure that fairness has been complied with. So we go through the scoring and the comments and have those, like, we're not looking at the technical stuff, that's a bit too clever for me anyway, but we'll go through and make sure a fair process has been undertaken and that the outcome. With this one, there's about 10 or 12 individuals being consulted with in order to get the number of disciplines in this one up to scratch. There's when you see the documents come out, they're going to be quite heavy because there's, as you can see, there's going to be about 15 or 20 schedules as well as specifications. So we have to figure out a way to make it easy for consultants and suppliers to submit as well. So, you know, just selecting what you're actually submitting for and only answering those. Don't feel like you have to, especially for panels with various schedules, if you can do, you know, one component of it, that doesn't mean that you have to do all of them. You just specifically focus on that component. Don't try and answer all of them, or just don't go, oh, I can't do all of it, I'm not even going to submit. So we make it very clear at the front, I think it's on the form, to tick exactly what discipline or schedule you're submitting for. So I'm going to still say late 2024. It potentially will be open for longer than 21 days, and probably don't expect a 90-day turnaround. So usually we have in our documents that the pricing will be held for 90 days until we award or it goes to council. For the ones where we know that we will have a lot of submissions and it's going to take a lot of resources to do that evaluation, we will often extend that up to 120 days, but that would be included in the documents as well. So you'll be made aware of that up front.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? You do have one more? Yes, if we could just get the microphone there. Sorry, thank you. To Nikki again?
Nikki gets off the hook this time. This one's for John. So John, yeah, I understand, you know, with panels, obviously the LGP, you know, the 5 years thing, you can't let necessarily someone back on. I know Queensland does something different to that, but New South Wales doesn't like that process. That's okay. Once we get beyond the 5 years, I'm interested in the dynamic. So, you know, is that I think you were saying that it now is potential for others to get on. Is that right? After the 5 years is expired, now it's going to 10. Is that correct?
No. So when you go onto our contracts and tenders page, and you'll see the 35 contracts. So when you go into that page, you'll see the contract date. So some will say it's 3 years plus 2 lots of 12-month extensions. That's what traditionally everyone's used to. So that will, when we re-evaluate that one, and so when it comes that contract, you'll see a contract end date. When we go out to tender for that again, it'll either be communicated that it'll be same format, or it'll be going over to a dynamic contract model. When we changed the key ones, we went back out to market, we opened it up. There's a lot of work. Our minor and major works contract was a lot of responses. And what we did was we went out and said, right, it's going to be a contract that will run for this long. I suppose the weakness, it doesn't flag to the market that it's 3 + 1 + 1. It says it's just a 10-year. But when you see it that long, what I'm saying is when you see that longer term, and it'll say the dynamic contracting model, the category managers can evaluate whether they need to refresh that. So they will have a schedule. We have a tender schedule that I look at, and we have one online. But then beyond that, we will be doing planning. So it then becomes a bit of you've got to register, make sure you're registered to get the information and notification. Don't just sit there and go, oh, yeah, I saw that. And then time goes by and it misses it. You can communicate with us and ask, well, when are you going to do that contract? Because some of the contracts we might have looked at and gone, right, we're going to do it every 18 months, every year, depending on what it is. Or whatever the scenario, we might get market feedback. There's 30 companies waiting to get on in that category. So it probably does encourage a little bit more asking the question because it's not visible by the timelines again. But yeah, that's what you see. So, and just because I suppose reinforce that, when you see that 10-year or the 8-9 year, ask the question of LGP. Just come back to us, when are you going to refresh it? And we'll have an idea of when that's going to be happening for you, and we can keep you in the loop with that. So.
Thank you, John. So I'd like to thank you all for your questions and thank our speakers for their answers. If you did ask a question online, we will be putting those together for answers and sending those out. I'll pass off to Nikki, who's going to close us out today.
Cool. Thanks, guys. So yeah, just thank you all. I'm just going to jump back to that last slide. If there is any further questions, feel free to just email them through as well, because like we said, we are having a Q&A, so we want to make sure that we're providing the same answers back to everyone. The webinar will be public on our Wollongong City Council website, as well as the Q&A fact sheet. once again, like Greg said at the beginning, this is obviously a lot of time, resources, costs that you guys put in. We love to see your submissions. We love receiving your submissions. We love doing business with, especially suppliers in our council and our LGA. So we really do thank all suppliers that we work with, we have in the past, and we really do look forward to working with you guys in the future. So thank you all for coming. And yeah, that's about it. We'll wrap it up.